Okay, so this is what's coming up is the last panel in here before the afternoon break. And then after the break, you've got a choice of 2 rooms again. In here, we're going to be talking about taking targeting to the next level. And over in the main hall, we're going to be talking about future-proofing the business of television. And then after those sessions, we're going to be having some drinks. So please do stick around for those. They're sponsored by our great partners, Magnite. And they'll be starting around 5:30. So lots to look forward to. Okay. Finally, for this theme, we're going to be covering everything about ad innovation and new formats in depth on this panel. And it's going to be anchored by global media and entertainment strategist Marianne Halford. She's joined by some fantastic guests. And rather than me going through all their names, I'm going to leave that task to Marianne. So please welcome Marianne and her panellists to the stage. Give them a warm round of applause. Cheers.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I hope everybody's having a productive day and learning a lot of interesting things. Well, we're going to be here to have a great conversation about ad innovation. And we have representatives from all various aspects of the ad ecosystem. We have Flora, our buyer. We have Katie, our publisher. And then we have what I call the enablers. Leon, Allan, and Mar. Okay, so and I would describe the panel a little bit, but that will take the entire 35 minutes if you read the description. So we're going to endeavor ourselves right now to get through and talk about all the various things that were promised in the overview for this session. So I would like to start with the buy side. Okay, it is the energy that keeps this whole system going. And I'm going to ask each one of you to actually provide a brief overview of what you actually do, and then what's one really interesting innovation that you and your organization have been involved in this past year.
Okay, great. So, hello, I'm Flora. I'm head of planning at Gottlieb. So you're calling me a buyer, and I'm finding it really weird because I never get called a buyer anymore, because I'm definitely in the planning space rather than the buying space. But I get.
You help the buyers.
Yeah. Definitely not. Within my role, I'm multimedia planner. I work very closely with the head of AV planning, which is Mike Williamson, and we work out how to approach distributing the budget for different clients. And I work across all of the different clients at Gottlieb. My favourite or best innovation, I think, is all about thinking about what is consumer centric. What's going to be best from a consumer to encounter and understand and enjoy from a kind of experience level. And so because of that, I like the simplicity of the ad pause, which I know is been around for a while, but I just think it's a great format where you can buy into a contextual moment. And we did it for Pladis around biscuit breaks. And it's just a very simple, no-brainer, makes total sense. So I like the simplicity of that.
Did you use special imagery for the biscuit?
Yeah, we had a display image for it, talking about having a break and etc. But ultimately, I love that one. But we've got, I think, a better one coming up, which is using the ad pause for a pet brand and using it as ad pause, which I just think is super cute.
I do too. And then the other thing that I thought was interesting when I talked to you is that you, at your agency, you focus on making sure 5 to 10% of what you're doing has some sort of innovation.
Yeah.
Part of it, correct?
Yeah, we work with our clients to try and push ourselves to ensure that we're driving innovation. We actually have innovation workshops where we scale out types of innovation, because innovation means different things to different people. And so we kind of have a structure of do, progress, pioneer, and that helps us to work out where we're focusing our time and effort, and we have targets against that for the year. But we still also want to be accountable with our spend, so we do think that it's disproportionate. It disproportionately drives attention to do something different within the formatting, and therefore 5 to 10% of our budget should be pushing innovation in order to make sure that people are paying attention.
Fantastic. Katie, why don't you talk about things at Warner Brothers Discovery and some of the things you're doing there, and then some of the innovations that have happened in the last 12 months.
Yep, so I run the ad sales team for the UK and Ireland across all platforms. And I think for us, the whole piece around new formats is that combination of how do we ensure that we can keep making money, but in a way that is as relevant or as unintrusive as possible for the consumer, especially in an SVOD streaming world where people are paying. And so I think you need to make sure, we talk about this a lot, that our ad experience is as premium as our content is. And so that is the whole kind of ethos behind kind of why we're trying to develop new formats, especially because we have obviously super premium outside of the UK where we have Max, we have really super premium scripted and films, and it's kind of like what's appropriate in that environment. But also very, very relevant for us at the moment is sport, because we have TNT. Right. We have, for the Olympics as an example, with Eurosport, we had 54 feeds on Discovery Plus. How do we make sure that we are monetizing those whilst not really annoying our customers? So, yeah, there's lots of different things. But one of the things that we were talking about, wasn't it, the thing we've just announced, we've actually done one today, which is virtual product placement in streaming for General Motors in the US. We've just announced that across Max, Discovery Plus, and the Go products. So it'll be interesting to see how that works.
Yeah, it will be. Very interesting. Okay, Leon.
Over to me. Leon Siotis at Magnite, specifically responsible for the SpringServe platform for all markets outside of the US. And SpringServe is really the ad serving, ad decisioning engine that kind of underpins a lot of the kind of Magnite tech. I guess for the purpose of this session, we're an enabler, although I usually associate that with some sort of bad habit or something on the other side. So hopefully that's not the case. As far as things that have excited me this year, it's almost like picking my favorite child. But I think one of the most exciting things that we announced maybe a couple of months ago was we've been working closely with TF1 in France, who introduced at their digital upfronts a whole host of new ad formats that they're kind of bringing into the TF1 Plus app, which reaches 25 million people within the French market. And I think the ad formats themselves, very exciting. The ability to make it addressable and deliver at scale is where I think almost some of that innovation starts to come into play, because a lot of people in this room will probably say, I've served an ad, like a pause ad, 5 years ago. Is that innovative? And I actually think that it's kind of bringing all these pieces together now on your TV screen is what takes it to that next level and makes it takes it beyond a press release.
And the addressable also increases the yield significantly, doesn't it?
You would hope so. We get to talk to the planners on that one and see how they feel.
Allan?
Hey, I'm Allan from Harmonic, and I look after the monetization portion of the platform. For those that don't know Harmonic, we deliver the streaming infrastructure for major live sports events such as the Olympics, Super Bowl, etc. Not responsible for Netflix, so don't look at me for that one. But from an ad tech perspective, we also as part of the ecosystem there, we have a SSI solution, and really the innovation there is really we've moved beyond traditional ad breaks into in-stream ad formats, and those are really the ad formats where we're doing things like squeeze back, double boxes, bless you. From a technology front, which people have seen in the past, but they're done on a production side. We're really doing these in the server side now, and it not just it makes it personalised. So we can share, obviously, as we all talk about addressability, and it's key now, for monetization. And we trigger those things off of things like high and low points in the sports event in real time. So things like sports radar data, etc. So someone's got a home run from a US perspective.
Well, the Mets just signed Soto, so we're going to have a lot of home runs.
Yes, for sure. So you produce those effects. Yeah, and then obviously these are in-stream ads, short form ad units, 6 seconds, 10 seconds with squeeze back double boxes, L-shaped, really unconstrained from an infrastructure perspective.
That's great. And then Mar, you do something very interesting. So why don't you talk about your company and one of the top innovations this past year?
Yeah, so I'm Mar from Ryff, and at Ryff we connect brands to content, and the way we do it is with in-scene advertising, or as Katie already mentioned, product placement, virtual product placement. Think about bottle of water on the table, think about billboard in the back, and this way you can, in a very non-intrusive way, implement brands into content and have your audience or have your brand where your audience is.
Mm-hmm. And do people actually respond to it because they're actually watching content? They're not necessarily thinking that they're watching something that would be Coca-Cola or Evian water.
Yeah, but there is sort of a subliminal effect. So when people see that regularly, you don't over-push it. When people see it regularly, they will remind it. And especially when you combine it with any other form of advertising, like a pre-roll or a sponsorship package, the add-on actually has an increase in purchase intent and also has an increase in remembering the brand.
Okay, so that helps with recall, particularly if somebody goes to the supermarket.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I'm going to move into all the various formats that were listed in the description. So we're going to first start with what I guess they called non-interruptive ad formats. Now, Katie, the WBD did the Olympics this past summer, so you did a lot of interesting things with non-interruptive ad formats. Can you talk a little bit about some of the things you guys did?
I can talk to you about the things that we want to do for the next Olympics, because actually we didn't manage to deliver it for this Olympics yet. But it's exactly as Allan said. It's about, we're looking at things like squeeze backs, having the ad running next to the picture, so you can still see the action, but you're being able to monetize. I think for us, it's that there's sort of two pieces to that. You have a couple of channels which are based on your live linear simulcast channels, right? And that's easy. You can just swap out the ads that were on the linear channel for digitally addressable ads, right? Simple. But then when you have got something like 54 feeds, they're not coming from a linear channel. They don't have an ad break. So it's kind of how do you put those ad breaks in a way that isn't going to kind of crash into anything important. So I think, that's a massive focus for us this year. Another example is we have the Champions League. There's a new format. In January 29th and the 30th, we'll be showing 18 concurrent games on each day at 8 o'clock. So it's like they're clearly not all coming from linear simulcast. So how do we make sure that's a bit simpler because they have more obvious ad breaks, whereas other things like the cycling, we were saying, it's just harder to find a natural place to actually go away from the action. So, it's a very live kind of project for us at the moment on sport.
And I would assume that you see this as a way of increasing ad inventory for you within it. And and from people like Flora, is there a lot of demand for this kind of product as well?
I think generally in sport,
I think Mike and I were actually speaking about this earlier, and we were speaking about the split screen thing, and we were saying that there's definitely, you want to get closer to the content, right? So you definitely think that from our side and from the client side, there's definitely demand. It's just about finding or setting it up in the right way that it doesn't interrupt the consumer too much. So I think it's a balance, but it's about making it the right moment and making it the right product for the moment in order to make it work.
Yeah, and I think I was about to say that if it's a relevant ad, you're going to be much more open to the fact that it's there. And I think that, that's something else that we've just launched as well is shoppable ads based on AI. So we're doing, screen by screen product identification using AI. And then that means, if you've seen two people from Sex and the City having a glass of wine, you can make sure that the first ad coming out into the ad break is from, Ridgeview Wines or whatever. So again, it's about making sure that you're giving consumers the most relevant ad to them that's in the right, place.
Well, let's talk about shoppable ads, because that is one of the topics that was mentioned in the list. How are all of you involved with shoppable ads at this point in time?
You can start with me. And ultimately, we're capable of delivering, if somebody wants to run shoppable ads, we are set up in order to deliver that. The honest answer is I don't think we're, at a point quite yet within the kind of ecosystem where people want to be kind of clicking on their remote control to buy something that's not necessarily kind of endemic to the TV screen itself. That said, I think that it's still very early in this process, and we'll probably see much more investment as time goes on. But this is, my personal opinion on it. That is probably one for the future, but you see the foundations being built.
Allan, are you involved in helping?
Yeah, I think from an SSAI perspective, we deploy shoppable ads in the US, especially from a consumer perspective. Am I a fan of them? Not really, but we enable the technology and we make it happen. So it is quite widely used from a.
Well, when does it work?
I don't particularly like them, so
Okay.
I'm the wrong person to ask when they work.
So it's not the pinnacle, if you will.
I would have a
definitely not-
hypothesis, right? Sorry to interrupt.
That's right.
I would have a hypothesis that if the product is scarce or hard to find or something like that, I think it could work. And maybe if you overlay retail data on top of it, so you're like really focused, that person's kind of in market, and maybe it's hard to find and you don't know where to get it, maybe then it could be helpful. But
or more event-driven even.
Yeah,
I think for
cultural
us, we can sort of do everything on anything because the technology has two sides. On the one hand, we scan the material, we find the perfect placement, the perfect contextual placement to place anything in, and on the other hand, we do the dynamic integration. We say it's for the buy side, it's, how can you get into the audience you want? Mm-hmm. And for the content providers, how can you optimize on monetization? Look at localization, content's traveling way more, you can put a Fiji water in the US, you can put an Orangina in France. Mm-hmm. And so you can play way more with the content you have on the archive and any new content as well.
And we were saying it just makes it much more scalable because one of the reasons why product placement hasn't really grown that much in this market, apart from the fact that it's just quite hard from a compliance perspective, is scale. Really, the only people who've got the scale to do it are ITV, right? X Factor, having whatever on the table.
Yeah.
That's when you would go to a client and you could actually justify charging for it to be there. But where we have things like, we have two lifestyle channels, which are very, very, Food Network and HGTV, right? Absolutely perfect for product placement, but a lot of the content comes from the US, and where we've got local content, one series of it is not going to kind of reach the same levels as an X Factor, let's be completely honest. But so using technology like Ryff means we can actually go to a client and we can deliver something that's going to have some reach and some cut through because we can put it into multiple shows and make sure we're getting a decent amount of placement.
Yeah, actually, could you take something for the Food Network where it would be an American show, let's say with Rachel Ray, but you wouldn't have the same products here as you would.
Replace them, yeah.
Okay, so you could look at working with both.
Big beans on the table.
Yeah, exactly.
You could work with all three of these people and
Yes.
facilitating that. Okay, trying to get business done.
I already work with him, it's fine. I'm very much looking forward to working with these guys.
On the retail side as well, I said, at MG, we just did Retail Planning Week 3 weeks ago, and retail, we all know, is absolutely huge, and I think it would be remiss of us to say that this is not a huge area, right? We know that you need to lean into it. It's just about finding the right measurement for it, I think, to set expectations.
Yeah.
So that, you're not expecting people to watch an advert and instantly buy something. If they do, amazing, a bit of added value, I think. Mm-hmm. But realistically, you're up a funnel. And if you do get the shoppable ads, then maybe it's a little bit of a bonus if you get actual action off the back of it.
Okay, so there's still hope for Jennifer Aniston's sweater. Okay. Talking about things that are somewhat akin to shoppable, can we talk about QR codes? That's
again, I think it's, if you think about our, where we are within this life cycle, it's early, and I think things like QR codes are, us trying to find an easy way to create that transaction, utilizing the TV.
Yeah.
So I don't think that QR codes is going to be what the future looks like as far as this goes, but, at the moment, it's one way of trying to drive an action or some sort of performance metric for someone who's sitting on their couch and is more used to using their mobile phone to do a lot of these other, kind of actions, while that traditional experience with the TV is a much more lean back and, as Flora said, upper funnel.
But from the data that you have, where are people responding most to QR codes?
I mean, the pause ad does feel like it's quite a good place to put it because and the other place I've noticed it a lot actually is Sky Sports. And I guess if you've got a Skybox, you can rewind, so that kind of helps because otherwise you've kind of, by the time you realise it's there.
Yeah.
But actually, they've got it over live sport, golf shop. You can go on and you can buy sort of golf products from it. There's some interesting stuff. I haven't seen the numbers, so I don't know how much it's driving, but it's quite an interesting way of using it.
I feel like the best case study was that beer advert. Do you guys remember that with the QR code for free beer on the TV screen? No one else remember that? It was like a TV ad with a QR code and it was just dancing around, but it was free beer. It got banned because obviously you can't give out free beer to anyone. But it was like people were like thousands and thousands of people scanned it because it was free beer.
And you scanned it too, didn't you?
I scanned it for sure.
Did you get your beer?
No, they'd run out by that point. But my point is that's the only time I've ever used a QR code, and I think as a consumer we need to think about why would people use it. It's a bit clunky. It's not.
Yeah.
It's it's
And
not
how much?
frictionless.
I think how much as well, we do so much on advertising, right? You see so much on advertising. When is it becoming annoying? And when it's going to work against your brand as well? I would.
It's taking up space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just don't think the user experience is really great. And I think that's what people, we're very much focused on what the advertisers want. But in the bigger picture, it's all about, there's only two things you can control in the industry, and that's either the content and the user experience. And, when I see QR codes in the user experience, I sort of cringe.
But do you know where they are used
perspective.
absolutely brilliantly to the extent that they massively reduce friction, and that is activating your streaming product, right? Because there's nothing better than the fact that you can just click on that, do the QR code, and then you're in. You don't, So I think there are some ways that they're used which are brilliant.
Yeah.
And the usage of them increased during COVID because of scanning menus and stuff like that.
Yeah, so people have got better at it.
Yeah, people know what to do at least, whereas I'd say 5 years ago people were a little
But there is a brand safety thing. If you scan a QR code, it goes into the wrong direction, then you sort of have a negative thing as well. So I think it needs to be handled very well on the back end as well.
I'm going to ask the audience, how many of you respond to QR codes on screen? Okay.
Well, there we go.
That's quite more than I thought.
That's worth doing.
On YouTube, they have a send to mobile interactive format, which is a bit more recent. I think that seems less clunky, even though it might not be the right mobile. I haven't used it, but I like the look of it more, if you know what I mean.
Well, you mentioned, Alan, that by the time you want to do it, you grab your phone, it's already gone.
Yeah, and I think that's for me, that's one of the things with the whole, lean back experience. Big screen TVs are a second screen in the house. They're not really the primary source. So, normally your phone's sat on the table somewhere, next to you doing something else. By the time you actually see what you want to do, then you grab your phone, unlock your phone, go to take it, it's too late. But like you say, if you're going to pause, you can record, go back, then obviously it's more of an interest. But at that point, it's just not a fun experience.
Yeah.
We've actually been working with ITV to develop something. It's not a QR code, but it's, lead generation kind of thing, and that's going to be tested in January. So I think that Jay from ITV is going to be speaking about it in the panel or in the presentation tomorrow. So if you're interested, maybe listen to that.
Stay tuned. Okay, so home screen innovation. Now, Leon, you've been doing some interesting things there.
Definitely. So, if you kind of think about the home screen, the OEMs were really the
CE manufacturers.
Yeah, TV manufacturers were really kind of the originators of, or at least the people that really adopted this at scale, and have done fantastic, I'd say kind of executions. I think the guys at Roku were up before. LG were kind of talking about some of the stuff they're doing. And I think kind of the big change is up until now, almost not entirely, but majority of the spend was kind of endemic to the TV screen. If you're going to advertise a new streaming application or a new TV show, this is clearly the most logical place to put it. You can kind of click through and watch it. But now you're starting to see a lot more brands looking at this because you can suddenly get 100% share of voice. You can potentially use different parts of your budget in order to appear within these environments. And we're seeing, I think we'll see a lot more growth of this as we go into next year and years to come.
Can you give us a good example of one that you've done in the last couple of months?
As far as kind of like home screen, like what takeovers, well, you see some certain car brands have been adopting this more commonly, and as well as some kind of airlines where we say kind of home screen takeover. It almost looks like it's kind of like a video with, I'd say with kind of imagery around it that really sits front and center within within the home screen when people kind of log on or turn on their televisions. So it's gone. I think it's been so far it's been kind of accepted and taken really well by everyone involved.
Are you planning for those types of things? Has that become an important part of your...
Yeah, we have to consider all of it. I think it can serve a specific standout moment. I think especially if you're like launching a Christmas ad, for example, and you put that on the connected TV and there's some anticipation, I think that you'll get amazing numbers and performance out of it. I think that some, and these kind of brands which you're speaking about, it performs
like upper funnel,
better
exactly.
upper funnel than it would lower funnel at the moment, because you're basically clicking through to seeing the ad generally. It helps with a short-term boost reach of to connect with consumers, I think, and create a bit of standout in a place where it doesn't have standout. So I think it's interesting. We definitely do buy into it.
And Katie, do you integrate this into any of your offerings at this point in time?
No, we don't, but we use it as a client, obviously, but then that's because we're a content
right,
creator,
exactly.
so we use it a lot in that sense.
Right,
I mean, I think, just interestingly though, talking about some of the aspects of it, one of what we are seeing with Max in the US is actually that there's a really high proportion of formats that, and spend that is against formats which are really basically taking away all other advertisers. So like over 20% of revenue on Max in the US is coming from where we basically close down all of the other ad breaks except for the one, and it's a 90-second actually, because we want to give the brand an opportunity to tell their own story. But so the Penguin, when it launched in the US, was just sponsored by one brand. There were no other advertisers in the Penguin in the US when it launched. So it's a kind of similar thing, right? For an event, for a new launch, where you kind of want that opportunity to completely stand out and not share with anyone else. It's a kind of similar.
It goes back to that disproportionate attention thing, which I'm going to plug another thing going on. So Vicky Fox from OMG is talking about our attention panel within MG and OMD, and OMG, I should say. So it's an overall new panel with Karen Nelson Field, which has been created to measure eye tracking on the linear TV and BVOD side of things. So, we know that these placements are right because we know that it's stand out and it's individual, but hopefully for OMG we'll be able to actually quantify it for the first time using this kind of panel. So there's a session tomorrow where she'll talk about it. She's an absolute genius, so do recommend to listen to that.
Yeah. Check your agendas for that for tomorrow. So, Mar,
Yes.
Ryff is doing some very interesting things. Can you talk about how this is growing in popularity, and then also what are the routes to scaling what Ryff does?
Yeah. So, so we see, especially when the content market is much more under stress. The budgets aren't there anymore, so we see that the content providers are looking in far more ways, not to only monetize on the archive, but also look at, what can we do with new content, deficit funding, and of course, it's who you
do
talk
all of
to.
you know about deficit funding? Because oftentimes with the television show, you have a license fee from ITV, then you might have a pre-sale to RTL in Germany, but you still have a bunch of money that you need. You have some soft money, but then you still have a couple $100,000 to finish the episode. So that's what you're talking about.
Exactly. And again, what I mentioned in the beginning, it's like content's globalizing and localizing way more. So in the past, you signed different rights, and my background is content, so I'm very passionate about it. But you sign, and now you sign way more rights. So what we do, we lean into that completely. And then, of course, we have three ways of working. One way of working is that we work with the advertising teams in the content provider itself and say, listen, add this to your ad offering. The second thing is that we've got our own brand sales team. Shirley Hughes is sitting there, so if anyone wants to talk to her, she's here as well. So she's leading up the brand sales team with us, and she's got all the connections with the brands that are looking for a new experience and looking for how can I get to the audience. And of course, especially what I mentioned with content traveling. In the past, the demographics were more on the show, but now there's a different audience on the socials than the audience is on the linear channels than the audience that are on the digital channels. And the same piece of content you can see in multiple outlets. Look at Friends, look at all other shows. You can see them everywhere. And so you can target that way more. So I think there's two ways for scaling. There's a technical. So we are focusing on launching this in a programmatic way in 2025. And of course, the second one, which I think is very important to make it scalable, is the contextual part. So we were talking also about the QR codes, where I think there is a room for it, but it needs to be with the right content. If you talk about Food Network, that would be perfect for QR codes, because people say, oh, I want to make that, where can I find this, or where can I do that? We all do it, the kids do it on a TikTok to find it. We do still do it on Google. I understood that my daughter doesn't use that anymore. But this is how you want to do it, so why don't make it easy? But it needs to be, so on the one hand, in a technology way, and Allan, you can talk a bit more to this, it needs to be easy, non-complex, and on a experience way for your audience, because at the end of the day, we need the audience. It needs to be relevant, contextually relevant.
Allan, and I understand you've been working closely with Mara and her team.
Yeah, and not just Mara, but obviously Leon's team as well. And really what we've done there is we showed that you can really do all this, virtual product placements, dynamic brand insertion. You can run them all server side and really continue to have the same CPM-based transactions. You can track impressions in the same way as the rest of the ecosystem works today. And that's the same for in-stream advertising. We do it in exactly the same way. So there's no new infrastructure, no new reporting that needs to be done around that. And we've done that for probably the last couple of years. We've done some demonstrations with customers for that as well. And I think, as Mar says, the real challenge there is just getting adoption. Somebody has to be first. And I think there's always this reluctance, definitely from a brand and the agencies, about who's going to go first. Because once somebody's gone, everybody else has to follow suit. Otherwise, somebody gets left behind. And nobody wants to be left behind. Say that.
Because in this progress pioneer structure we have, the pioneer is it's never been done before. And we're trying to do those things. So maybe, I don't know, not everyone.
Call Flora.
No, they call us because we've got loads of targets we need to deliver. So if you've got something new, come to Manning Gottlieb.
The four of us will be knocking down your door.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, and I would say, just talking about the in-stream advertising piece a little bit more for the live sports, it's, from a publisher perspective, but the reason why we're doing this is, from a publisher's perspective, is everyone's looking for new inventory, new revenue streams. And we've seen that you can get anywhere between an extra 20% roughly. And these are all very much unintrusive ad formats, about what we were talking about earlier. So definitely something that the advertisers and the agencies are all asking us for. So, and it fits within that traditional ecosystem as well. So it's nothing new from that perspective. So it's the same technology that we use to deliver virtual product placement and dynamic brand insertion. And this is all personalized, and it just fits in with the standard ecosystems with companies such as SpringServe and Magnite.
I have one last question for all of you, but I want to see if anybody in the audience has a question, because we're getting near time. Are there any questions out there? Okay, I don't see one. So if there is there one? No. Okay. It's the end of the year. Can you each give me one prediction about ad innovation for 2025? What can people look to?
So I think a lot of the things that we've been talking about today are going to come out of what I would call the kind of press release stage, where it's, hey, we've managed to do this, to become, actual, kind of line items on people's bottom line. We have the tools in place and all of the kind of parties able to deliver these things at scale. And I think we're kind of at that tipping point now where we'll start to see a lot more of that as we go into the new year. So less about one format, more about the kind of wider adoption of all of said formats.
Katie?
Yeah, I think, as I said, we are really, and we're doing it for Discovery Plus in the UK as well, it's about those formats which enable brands to tell stories and give them much more standout. So, trying to do that more universally so we can actually get some learnings from it, I think would be something that we would be wanting to see next year.
Flora?
I think that generative AI is going to continue to massively accelerate exponentially in terms of pacing. So I think that contextual targeting through AI is currently possible, but I think that there are way more interesting opportunities to connect with culture, and I'm hopeful that we'd be able to buy that rather than manually trying to do that.
Yeah.
So I think that there's a big opportunity there.
Allan?
I really think, just touch on the contextual advertising piece. For sure, just speaking from I know what we're doing, that's going to come into the mainstream next year for sure. 100%. Contextual information as part of the vast tags for Leon and his team to target against for sure. That's 100%. That's going to be there next year.
But also brand safe, because that's the big barrier at the moment.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the big one.
We leave that piece to Leon to sort out first. For the technology piece.
Nothing wrong with naked attraction.
Nothing wrong with naked attraction.
Favorite show.
Naked and Afraid, yeah. Any of the naked ones are fine.
For sure. But for me, the big thing, innovation that's you're going to see next year, I think you're going to see, you'll start to see deployments in the VOD domain or AVOD of server-guided ad insertion with, a lot of clients are going to be supporting that, using Simid to try and recreate some of these, split-screen, ad formats. That's going to be the thing. I think I'll be very surprised if you don't see deployments of those next year.
Mar?
Yeah, well, I sort of agree with everyone. So it's always good to be the last one. But especially with Leon, I think any of this will work, and we're all going to work on making this better, faster, better experience, smooth, and brand safe at the same time. So I think there's so many initiatives out there which are great initiatives, and it's just about how you get them better and faster and less complex.
Yes, simple is one of the words that I think
That
was the themes I've heard from this morning.
Yeah.
Well, listen, thank you for being such an engaging audience, and look forward to seeing you all around the show. Thank our panel.